This is Inside the BFA, the official podcast of the Balloon Federation of America. Each episode of Inside the BFA is an open discussion of the many aspects of the sport of ballooning and the BFA's work to represent its members and the ballooning community at large. Now, here's your host, editor of the BFA's Ballooning Journal, Glenn Moyer.
Hello, and welcome to Inside the BFA, the official podcast of the Balloon Federation of America. I'm Glenn Moyer, editor of Ballooning Journal, as probably many of you know. Inside the BFA is this new official podcast for the BFA, and in our first episode, just not long ago, we discussed the then upcoming NPRM to FAR Part 108, which we dubbed that episode the Drone Wars. Now that NPRM has been issued, it's been out for maybe a couple of weeks now. So tonight we're going to take a deeper dive into the NPRM and exactly what we found there, what this could mean for us as balloonists from a safety standpoint and other concerns, how best we can address those issues and respond to them. I'd like to begin tonight by recognizing the members of the BFA's Call to Action Committee. These folks, each and every one of them, have devoted countless hours working on our behalf, we, the members of the BFA and the sport of ballooning, on this issue already. Our Call to Action Committee is Pat Cannon, who is the chairman, Andrew Baird, Sam Parks, Mark West, and Henry Rosenbaum. And then working as a special consultant to the committee is Dave Sullivan. So thank you to all of them. I also want to very quickly give you an idea of what we're talking about tonight. Many of us have different concepts of what exactly is a drone. A lot of us are familiar with the shoebox or briefcase-sized drone that our neighbors or maybe we ourselves fly as amateur photographers and sportists and things of that nature. The primary focus that we're concerned in this new NPRM are much larger drones that are going to be used as delivery vehicles for Amazon, Walmart, big box stores. This is a graphic that gives you an idea of how large those drones could be, literally the size of our baskets, and in some cases larger. And in fact, some agricultural drones can even be larger than this. So that's just to give you a sense of what we're talking about tonight. So to specifically dive into the NPRM for Part 108, I'm joined by members of the Call to Action Committee, Chairman Pat Cannon, Andy Baird, and again, their special consultant, Mr. Dave Sullivan. So let me introduce those folks to you if you're not familiar with them. Pat Cannon, of course, is a BFA director at large. He is the immediate past president of our organization, having served 3 terms. He's actively involved in helping pilots with their medical issuance and has been for months. He's a veteran fixed wing and ballooning pilot and a lighter than air DPE. Pat was deeply involved in the group responsible for the Class C LOA Letters of Authorization program, and he's chairman of the BFA's Call to Action Committee. Andy Baird is the owner and general manager of Cameron Balloons US, the manufacturer of hot air balloons. His involvement in ballooning includes being a past president of the BFA, the U.S. delegate to the FAI's Ballooning Commission, an FAA designee, the BFA NTSB technical liaison, an active pilot and competitor, and he is, as we've said, a member of the BFA's Call to Action Committee. Finally, to join us tonight, Dave Sullivan is the Southeast Region Director of the Balloon Federation of America. Dave has been flying balloons since 1974. He's a retired Army officer and military instructor pilot. He currently owns and operates a repair station just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, as well as providing parts for Aerostar balloons. As the STC holder, he is a principal in Digitool, a provider of flight instruments for lighter than air. Dave previously operated the only 141 training program in the southeastern United States. He only recently retired as a designated pilot examiner for the state of Georgia after almost 20 years of performing check rides for aspiring pilots in the southeast region. Dave incidentally got involved in the drone issue shortly after the original release of the Aviation Rulemaking Committee report. That was way back in April of 2022, and he has been closely working with the BFA's Call to Action Committee since that time. So with that as background, let's get to it. The proposed Part 108 NPRM has been out for a couple of weeks now. So Pat, let's start with you. As chairman of the Call to Action Committee, What can you tell us that you have found? What do we need to know? Where are we today? Bring us up to date, please.
Well, first, thank you, Glenn, and thank you to all of you who've joined us this evening. As you all have heard already, this is a big deal. Part 108 is an entirely new regulation. It's going to not take the place of Part 107, which has been in existence for some time, but it is an entirely new regulation, and it's constructed in a very complex manner. So you might imagine, with over 700 pages that have been written, most of it is in the preamble. So when you take a look at this new regulation or the proposed regulation, look at the preamble. If you see something in the regulatory side that you have a question about, generally it will be explained in much more detail in the preamble. It is a huge document. It's a huge document. But we have been digging down as deep as we can, and we're not just doing this alone. We're doing this with an entire coalition of most of the what we call alphabet groups in the aviation business. We have quite a number of people that are helping and as well are quite involved in the evaluation and comment on this new rule. That includes our coalition partners and also the NAA Aerosport group, which involves most of those people that are flying in the lower altitudes in Class G airspace. In digging through this, we've found two main points of concern, and certainly there are quite a few others, which we may talk a little bit more tonight on, but the two that really are concerning to us are the right-of-way rule changes. So all of us know that in 91-113, balloons have had the right-of-way over all other aircraft in the past. This new regulation is going to change that. It is going to call for a different type of rule as it comes to right-of-way. Also involved in this is the electronic conspicuity, which is a device that would be planted on an aircraft to show where that aircraft is in the airspace.
So, Pat, let's take each of those issues then separately as the two primary issues of concern. Can you delve a little deeper into what exactly is going to be the issue with right-of-way?
Well, one of the changes that took place in this was something we were quite surprised at, but we were expecting it because we've been hearing for 2 years that the drone industry had intended to try and obtain right-of-way over manned aircraft. And that has been a great concern to us. But when this new rule came out, we saw in subparagraph H of 91-113 that their drones are going to have the right-of-way over other aircraft unless that aircraft is equipped and broadcasting their aircraft's location using either ADS-B or an electronic conspicuity equipment device that meets the requirements of 108, 195. But this is a huge shift. It's a complete shift in the right-of-way rules that we've seen and have been used to using for years and years and years. And it's a departure from the traditional principles that aircraft with the most maneuverability, the right-of-way is going to be given over to the aircraft that is being maneuvered from somewhere else. So manned aircraft may not have the right-of-way over these devices.
Well, I love big words. You've already used this electronic conspicuity. What the heck is that? And what is it that the FAA is proposing? And I think, Dave, maybe that's more in your wheelhouse?
Sounds like a plan, Glenn. Thank you. When we start talking about electronic conspicuity, there's a lot of different issues involved. First thing let's define it. And I'll give you the technical definition out of the preamble. It refers to the use of electronic devices that enable aircraft to broadcast their position, altitude, and other flight data to other aircraft and ground systems, allows for enhanced situational awareness, and helps prevent mid-air collisions by improving the ability of pilots and air traffic control to see each other. And that's a great way to start out about it. Most of the time, though, in this context, we talk about EC, the abbreviation, as being a low-power, portable, battery-powered device that broadcasts only out to a range of 5 to 10 miles, does involve the ground stations, it's aircraft to aircraft only. All right. ADS-B involves a series of ground-based stations as well as aircraft to aircraft. We try to improve the see and avoid issue by using that device. The regulation gives us some specifications and asks for recommendations with a specific device at 108.195. Unfortunately, there are no devices that meet those specifications currently on the market. So that puts us in kind of a problem. This sort of visibility right now is not a requirement for us. Under 91.215 and 91.225, the transponder reg and the ADSB regulation, neither one of those mandate that for us, since we don't have an electronic system or a engine-driven electrical system on board. Doesn't address any changes to those two provisions. So if you go by the existing regulation, there's no requirement for us to have the device. Okay. ADSB is not really a good solution for us, to be quite honest with you. Okay. Everybody's talked about it. It's been thrown out as the fix, the be all end all. But there's a significant problem with ADSB at lower altitudes. And quite frankly, below 500 feet, ADSB is pretty much unreliable. You're out of the range of the ground stations. You don't get a bounce off the aircraft. You don't have any solutions for that right now. We would more than likely support the use of such a device once it's fielded and approved, but we're not really enthused about the idea of a mandated approach, and neither are our industry partners within the AOPA coalition or the NAA group. There's been a lot of issues and questions about approvals and certifications. I would think that if it gets that far, and it probably will, I would think that a statement of conformity with the regulation might be in order. There's a device that is currently TSO'd, not available in the United States, called TABS, and I've talked about that before in other forums. With that particular device, you just need a certificate of conformity that it goes along with the specifications as being set out. And I would expect to see something along the same line here. And there's a caveat to all this too that I'll get to in a second. Be aware that having said all that, there's a flip side to that problem. We have to be visible to the drones, but they're not visible to us in any way, shape, fashion, or form. There's no ADSB out authorized nor needed on the drones. They're not using any other devices in order for us to be able to see them. That's a bit of a problem. That's an issue. Goes back to see and avoid, which is questionable. You can't see them, and you certainly can't hear them coming. They're required under 108 to have a detect and avoid system involved. Think of detect and avoid as an electronic version of the see and avoid rule that we've been living under Part 91 for years. But there's a lot of issues with that, and there are as many systems of DAA as there are drone variants that are out there. A side note to the whole see and avoid, detect and avoid thing is the visual conspicuity, if you want a tertiary issue. Part 108 in the 400 and 500 sections addresses a number of criteria for the drones, but it does not address the visibility of drones. When balloons are built, they're certified to Part 31, which has a very specific part about the balloon has to be visible. So even in a somewhat hazy sky, you've got to contrast enough with the background in order to be able to be seen. We don't have the same visibility requirement currently established for the drones. That throws us for a loop. When you're flying a little higher and these things are down below you somewhere, you lose them in the ground clutter. So what do? You paint them bright orange or yellow or safety yellow, so we've got a sporting chance of seeing them. Electronic conspicuity, not currently required. This rule apparently wants to drive that forward. Right now, there's no devices on the market. I would expect to see a couple being fielded within the next few months, remembering that this rule probably will be going into effect in some part by the 1st of February.
Is it likely, to follow up on this, Dave, then, is it
Sure.
likely that in the search for electronic conspicuity, we would be talking about a device that I could own personally and put in my balloon when I go fly, similar to a portable GPS unit that we all have in our balloons? And if I go fly somebody else's balloon, I could put it, or if I have two balloons, which I did at one time, I could use it in either one. It's not assigned to the aircraft, is it? Or will it be?
That's still, you'll have to identify the aircraft within the unit. It will be battery powered. It will be portable. It is allowed for within the scope of Part 108. They're asking for recommendations on that sort of thing. There's a couple of units already in existence. They're not suitable for use in the United States because of frequency problems as well as signal attenuation. I know of 2 or 3 that are in development. It's not that hard. There's a lot of, let me put it to you this way. The EU is way ahead of us in this area. They've got a number of devices out there. They've got a device called FLARM, which is the contraction of the words flight alarm. And it will also tell you when something's coming towards you, as well as being able to identify you to another aircraft. That may have possibilities. They have an iPhone app that I've seen demonstrated, and it's pretty neat. But we can't use that in the United States because of FCC regulations. Yes, there will be devices. They'll be small. Mount them on your balloon. You'll be good to go.
I like that you brought up painting them bright orange or safety yellow, because I know from my many trips over to the UK, even people walking out in the evening, just walking down the street, wear those bright yellow with the silver reflective safety vest to be visible from traffic. We don't do that sort of thing here in the United States. And you would think that, these drones, maybe the part of the solution should be make them wear a safety vest, for goodness sakes, or paint them bright orange, whatever. Thanks, Dave.
Yes, sir.
We'll visit more, I'm sure. So we're talking about right-of-way and electronic conspicuity. Those are 2 of the primary concerns, but I know there's more than that. This NPRM was 700 plus pages. Andy, are there other issues that are going to be of concern to balloonists that we need to be made aware of?
The expression "the devil is in the details" comes to mind, and never has it been more true than this NPRM. Despite being 731 pages long, there's a lot we do not know. As Dave already alluded to, we know that there's going to be some sort of electronic conspicuity device. We don't know what it is. We don't know exactly how it'll work. We don't know what information it will collect. We don't know how it's going to share that information. We believe it will be direct, so within that range of 5-7 miles or so. But one of the issues that raises its head is privacy. What data will be collected? Who will have the ability to either access it or intercept it? How will that data be used? We don't know if altitude will be reported. We sort of assume that it would be. But all we really know is that the intention is to have a device on board aircraft by which drones can recognize us and fly around us. They can't fly over the top. They can't fly below. They have to avoid us by some predefined amount, and we still don't know if that's 250 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet. Again, that's not determined yet. But in this day and age where everybody's worried about releasing their phone numbers and their email addresses and their bank account numbers and big data being used against them, we just don't know what kind of data will be collected and how that might be available to big data consumers or the general public. We don't know. So that's one issue. Something that we haven't mentioned yet is the lost link procedures. In other words, if the controller, because let me take one step back. Beyond visual line of sight means that these aircraft will be flown not by somebody who can see it, but the intent is that these will be highly automated. So we will not have a pilot operating a drone remotely. These will be automated processes controlled by a flight operations person who may be controlling multiple drones at the same time. And what happens if the link to that drone is interrupted for some reason, power loss, interference of some kind? What happens? Well, you would probably think, well, it would just return home to base, and that is one possibility, or return to a safe point. But does it take a direct line? Is the detect and avoid system still working in that? Or there's also the possibility that it will land wherever it is. Again, the devil's in the details. We've talked about, and we focused in our discussions about package delivery drones, 110 pounds, the size of a basket. But the reg actually allows for other types of drone use, specifically agricultural use. And the reason this is a concern is threefold. One, they're going to be flying in the kinds of airspaces that we like to fly in, farm fields.
Yeah.
Two, they're bigger. They can be up to 25, I think I read somewhere 28 feet. And three, they're heavier. They can be up to 1,320 pounds. So we are talking about a very, very big drone flying in areas that we typically fly in, that has all of the issues of these package delivery drones. So there's certainly some unknowns there. There are a number of hierarchies of congested areas or densely populated areas. There's 5 of them currently. The type of operation that can be engaged in by certain drone classes can be limited to certain categories of population. So in other words, these ag drones will be allowed in category 1, so sparsely populated areas, so farm area where we like to fly. But we don't know ultimately how those definitions will pan out and how they may spill over into regular aviation, so for balloons and fixed wing aircraft, et cetera. That's unknown at this time. And one of the other issues is, will there be drone corridors? There is some discussion in the NPRM about shielded operations. These are areas in which drones can operate without DAA, without detect and avoid, and with complete right-of-way. And these are limited to some very specific areas. For example, within 50 feet of power lines or substations, and I assume we're now talking about big transmission lines, along railroad tracks, by bridges and pipelines. So the typical surveillance operations that have been done by fixed-wing aircraft could be done by drones, but there's a strong likelihood that they would have complete right-of-way and perhaps do not need the detect and avoid technology when they're operating in those areas. So we've talked, Dave has already mentioned see and avoid versus detect and avoid. We are used to aircraft being piloted by human beings who can look out the window and see what's going on around them. And we're definitely moving away from that mindset. We're moving away from the mindset that the least maneuverable aircraft have the greatest right-of-way. It's almost the inverse of that. So there's lots of sub-issues that are all related to the big topics.
I have to say, my head hurts already just listening to this, and I can't imagine the work the three of you and the others on the committee have done to dive into this document. We're obviously doing this for the benefit of our membership to help them understand what this NPRM is all about, and so that they can respond to it. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what are the key takeaways then for our members who are watching this tonight, for members who will watch it later on demand, balloonists that maybe are not members of the BFA but need to be concerned about this? What are the primary takeaways that they need to be aware of? Pat, let's start with you for that.
To really understand the significance of, for example, right-of-way, it's really important to take a look back at ADS-B, just as an example. When ADS-B was created, and as we understand, mandated, ADS-B was really not required to be put on aircraft, even aircraft with electrical systems, if you operated in certain areas of the country, in certain types of airspace. So not all aircraft are equipped with any type of beacon or ADS-B beacon of any kind. In thinking about that, there are a ton of non-conforming aircraft out there. What does that include? Well, non-conforming aircraft would be those that have no ability to put a device on board. Hot air balloons are one example of that, since we have never had an electrical system certified that I know of in a hot air balloon. But along with that, we have, according to our industry partners, we have about 17,000 aircraft that have been identified out there in the system that are non-conforming. In other words, they have no beacon or no ADS-B on board. That's a lot of aircraft. And a majority of those aircraft are operating at lower altitudes. I don't know if that 17,000 number includes balloons, and I don't know if it includes all of our other partners in the aerosport industries, such as powered parachutes or hang gliders. All of those people are operating down around 400 feet and below, and all of them are going to be considered as non-conforming aircraft. The thought of having that number of aircraft flying is a strict and very serious safety compromise. And that's not only for us, but all of our partners in this industry that are flying under the altitude of 400 feet.
And Dave, electronic conspicuity, I love that word. You sounded like there are some options out there, but am I going to have to pay out of pocket eventually to buy such a device? Is that going to be a concern?
That's a good question. It's an understandable, easy fix to go EC, but it incurs cost, and that's a shame. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. The first thing to say, there's a drone community needs to understand that EC needs to work both ways. And right now, it's just not that way. We're not seeing that as an option. We're basically being told to get out of the way if you don't have it. We can't do that either. Cost is a concern. There probably ought to be a subsidy for adding these devices to your aircraft, much like there was when ADS-B was introduced. But to take that statement a little bit farther, you have to remember that had 3 years to mature before it was a requirement on the aircraft. They came out with the rule, and then 3 years later, you either had to have it or there were other issues, and then there was a subsidy involved. We've not gotten any word of that. It's my understanding that there have been some discussions along that line. I just don't know. My biggest concern with respect to the whole EC issue is that we're looking at an implementation date potentially of around the 1st of February of next year. We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah. And Andy, as you said repeatedly, the devil is in the details. This NPRM is talking about operations 400 feet and below, but this may not be the end-all, do-all to this issue, right?
We are at the very beginning of drone operations, mass drone operations. And I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to realize that, things start small and grow from there. So currently, yes, 400 feet and below. Unfortunately, that's the area where we like to operate, especially for takeoff and landing. This is not restricted as we probably intuitively thought that, okay, package deliveries, so we're talking about urban areas or suburban areas. And there are indeed balloonists that operate in those kind of areas on a regular basis with corporate contracts. So they will be affected by the delivery drones. But the ag drones as well are in the kind of terrain that we love to operate in and where we are sort of relegated to operating in. So 400 feet right now. There is a proposal. I've seen a proposal to expand that up to 1,000 feet. It remains to be seen. We just don't know where this will go, but we do know we're at the beginning, and that we can assume that drone use, drone production will grow exponentially, making that 400-foot layer more and more congested. You can imagine that there may be noise complaints and therefore a strong desire from the public to push those drones higher and higher. Mm-hmm. Devil's in the details. We just don't know yet. And I do want to add one more thing about electronic conspicuity. Purchase price is one thing. And it may well be that technology is advanced, that the cost of implementing it will be low, but we also have to maintain it. We also have to perhaps get it approved or certified so that, we can be shown to be complying with the reg. And then testing, we want to make sure every time we go fly that it's working. If that's the only thing that's preventing a collision, we need to be absolutely certain that it's working. So there's a lot of details to be worked out.
Excellent point about that. You're absolutely right. Of course, right now, the good news is there is a 60-day comment period where any balloonist, any pilot, any member of the public can comment on this NPRM. We can tell the FAA what we think is good, bad, ugly, and indifferent, whatever. How do you do that? Well, there are a number of different ways. One of the simplest ways is you can write a letter And I think we have the address. We can show folks where to write. We'll share this address on social media as well because it's somewhat long. I would point out, though, that when you write, you always need to include the docket number, which you see up at the headline of that graphic. Doesn't have to be in the address, but put it at the head of your comments so that your comments are directed to the right place. Now, you can also comment online. If you don't want to sit down and write a letter, you can do it online. And to do that, you need to go to regulations.gov. Now, actually, there's a whole long URL, and it's www.regulations.gov/docket/FAA-2025-1908. But you can go there and complete or make your comments online without having to write a letter. With regard to writing a letter, let me also stress, don't try to undertake and answer everything. Pick out a few of the major areas of concern and address those. And don't use AI. It may be a great idea to say, oh, I'll just let ChatGPT write something for me. The FAA will be able to recognize that and they will disregard your comment. So it may take some effort on your part. Another place you want to write, you should, and we hope will be writing to your government representatives, your senators and your congressmen. On the screen, you see generic addresses that will work to do that. But most of your local congressmen and state senators have their own websites. They have local offices in their constituencies, and you can get address information there. Some will even allow you to use email. But you should be, and we would urge you to write to your congressmen and senators as well. So what are the issues of concern? The ones that have been addressed tonight are the ones that you see on the screen. These are issues that our call to action committee suggests you consider putting and addressing in your response when you do respond. And it is critical that we respond to this NPRM. I looked earlier today and there were about 40 responses on record so far. We have until October the 6th to get our responses in. And for those of you that need a landmark, perhaps on your calendar, well, that happens to be Monday of Balloon Fiesta out in Albuquerque. So if you're headed to Albuquerque, make a point to get your response written and mailed in or done online prior to departing for Albuquerque. But Monday, October the 6th is the close of that 60-day period. Again, don't try to address everything. Pick out some key significant points of concern and address those. At this point, I would have gone to, I've been monitoring, we do have a live chat room where people who are watching and logged in can post questions, but gentlemen, we don't have any tonight. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So we have a few minutes left. So let me just go round the horn and give you each an opportunity to make any final comment. Pat, we'll start with you.
Yes, I want to alert everybody that this effort is being put forth for the drones by a huge coalition of their organized efforts to bring drones into today's marketplace. And it's being backed by a presidential executive order. They would like to be first in everything, of course, and first in drones is on that list. They're backed by large lobbies, and they have a lot of money to do this. It is a very serious safety issue in our concern. We will continue to fight this process with our coalition partners and through our NAA partners as well. We may not win this war initially, but we are going to continue to work on this process with our partners as long as it's needed.
Dave, final thoughts?
You caught me flat-footed, Glenn. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry about that.
I would reiterate what you said about the AI issue. Please don't use AI to respond to the NPRM. I've gotten 3 or 4 people's, comments directed to me. What do you think of this? And while it's good, the problem with AI, it doesn't use critical thinking to do an analysis. And to be honest with you, that's part of the problem with this rule. It was written by advocates for the industry, certainly not by an aviation analyst. So, if you're going to use AI, use it to digest the points you want. Without thought one. Thought two, I'm hearing from a lot of people, well, if this happens, I won't be able to fly. That's not true. There's still an awful lot of airspace out there. It's problematic for the pilots and those who are in metropolitan areas. If we can get the webmaster or the person running this for us, I sent in a slide earlier to demonstrate that statement. The airspace around Albuquerque. 6 months ago, there was one drone nodem that applied in the Albuquerque metropolitan area. As of early this morning, when this shot was taken, there were probably 12 to 14 covering all of downtown Albuquerque, all the way up to and possibly including the southern part of Balloon Fiesta Field. That's problematic because those nodems, drone nodems, run through the next year. So it's going to happen during the time at Fiesta, and I certainly hope they're looking at that out there. My point being, you still can go way away from town and not have to worry too much about the drones. You've got the same issue everywhere else too. You may have to drive a little farther, but we're not going to get completely pushed out of the air. You're going to have to be a little bit more discretionary, I think, on where you're going to fly.
Andy, as a manufacturer, this obviously could have tremendous impact on your livelihood, your business. Your final thoughts, sir?
I don't believe in scaremongering or saying the sky is falling. And certainly, I don't think this is a situation that is of dire concern. However, however, the alternative to that is that we could say, well, look, this is man's oldest form of flight. How could we possibly be threatened? And the reality is somewhere between those two. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is the dawn of a new era where autonomous flight is for the first time in our history is possible. And it's going to change the way we do business. Potentially, it could make operating more expensive because of the electronics, but that's probably the only element that would create more expense. But it will change the way we do business. It'll change the areas we fly. It'll change, how we flight plan. There may be areas where we need to avoid at all costs because they're dedicated drone paths. I mean, we know we have at high altitude, we have airways that we want to stay out of or need to stay out of. There could be those at low level that are zoned, if you will, for drone use. We just don't know yet. And we won't know in the next year or the next year or two, but over the next 10 years, I think we'll have a big change. And so I think it's really important that we weigh in now, that we speak our minds and we preserve as much right of way as we can, and make sure we continue to operate as safely as we possibly can.
Thank you, Andy, and Pat and Dave as well. As we've noted, the 60-day comment period is now open, and it is vital that, as Andy was just saying, that we all make our opinions known, good, bad, or indifferent. So please don't wait too long to get to work on a response, and be sure you get it in so it can be considered. All of the information that we provided tonight will be shared on our various other social media platforms, addresses, points to consider, things of that nature. If you have questions, need help, by all means, earlier we identified the members of the BFA's Call to Action Committee. I'm sure the three gentlemen with us tonight would be happy to help, as would the other members. Feel free to call on them for advice and watch, as I say, all of our social media and other outreach efforts for additional information. If we learn more and come up with other areas of concern, we'll pass that information along as well. So let me wrap up, I guess, by simply saying thanks to Pat Cannon, to Dave Sullivan, to Andy Baird for joining me tonight for this second edition of Inside the BFA. Also, a special thanks to a gentleman you do not see. He's behind the scenes directing the program, and that is Fred Poole, our BFA director at large. This podcast concept was his in the beginning, so all credit due there. Fred, thank you for a great job of helping us put this together and make it all work. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope the information is of value. For those who are not able to watch it live, this is archived and will be available to watch on demand on the BFA's YouTube channel. So fly safe when you're out there, folks. Hopefully I'll see you on the balloon circuit somewhere soon. I'm Glenn Moyer. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you for viewing this episode of Inside the BFA. Membership in the Balloon Federation of America is your entry into the sport of ballooning, whether you're a pilot, crew, or an enthusiast. Everyone is welcome inside the BFA. For more information, see our website at www.bfa.net.